So we're good? Awesome, thank you. Turn my phone off. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you guys today? Happy Monday. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Jessica Allen. I've been a transaction coordinator within Keller Williams for about 7 years. I've worked and still work with some of the top agents in the business. I've been in the real estate industry for over 20 years. I've worked at Keller Williams, Remax, Global Banker. I also worked at Bank of America Home Loans, customer service for about 3 years. And then I also worked at Augusta Financial for about 3 years. I lived in the Antelope Valley for 30 years. I have 2 kids, one by accident and one by marriage. I have my fiance, husband's at home, my dog, Dodger. I just got my real estate license about 6 months ago, so I'm excited to see where that's going to take me. So,
congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go over, sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why after all that time did you just now decide to get your license?
Timing, I'm not
see
sure.
that.
Yeah, it was something that I always wanted to do. I don't know if I was scared to take the test or, whatever the case may be, but I don't know, I just didn't do it. So I just wanted to go over a couple quick tips. We're gonna go over the transaction side with the buyer. So, when you're writing offers, you get your offer accepted. Sometimes a listing agent will call you and be like, oh, hey, your offer is accepted. Don't ever tell your client that your offer is accepted until you actually have something in writing. There's been times, actually multiple times, where the listing agent will tell the buyer, or you as the buyer's agent, that your offer is accepted. Within that time period of them getting that offer accepted, they get another offer that's better than yours. So if you don't physically have a copy of a fully executed contract, you don't have a deal. So try not to get your clients excited beforehand, and just make sure that you actually have the copy of the fully executed contract. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just another tip, as soon as you do have that fully executed contract, make sure you're sending a copy to the lender. The lender is a very important part of the process. You don't want to delay anything with the transaction, so just make sure that once escrow's been opened, that you send an email to the lender letting him know that this escrow's been opened. And you may even want to give him a call as well, and just let the lender know that, hey, there's a contract in your email, we've opened escrow, let's get moving on this. There's a few things we'll go over today. We're going to go over the EMD, the earnest money deposit, inspections, request for repair,
Stop it.
Contingencies, the appraisal, loan documents, funding reporting, and then also command. So the EMD is also, the earnest money deposit is also known as the EMD. Once escrow has opened, you want to make sure that the buyer gets their deposit into escrow within 3 business days. There's 2 ways for the buyer to get the deposit, get the money to escrow. They can wire from their bank. To secure the wire, it's best for them to go into the bank to submit the wire. A lot of people try to do it online through their banking, and I'm pretty sure that most companies don't allow the wire to be made online through their banking system. So the best way to get it by wire is to actually physically have your client go into the bank and submit the wire. The other way that they can do it is they can drop off a check directly to the escrow company. Good morning.
Hi.
Come on in.
Oh,
Okay.
I was trying to figure out, you look like Jessica Dixon. Okay, is she Jessica?
Similar hair.
I'm Jessica.
Sorry. Didn't mean to disrupt.
Good morning. The EMD is important because it's letting the seller know you're serious about the purchase of their home. If the deposit is not submitted within 3 business days, the seller can issue the buyer a notice to perform. If the deposit is not given within the time period of the notice to perform, I believe it's 2 days, then the seller can cancel on you. So you want to make sure that this is the most important first step, is getting your deposit into escrow once escrow opens. It basically secures the transaction. Just a quick tip, when your client's submitting the deposit, make sure that they're using a bank account that's been verified with the lender. If they're using an account, say their mom's or their grandma's account, and that account hasn't been verified with their lender, it could possibly cause complications at the end. So you want to make sure that they're using a verified bank account that the lender has verified with them. Do you guys have any questions on that?
I do. If you're on the listing site, can you verify this information as well, or do you have to be the buyer's agent only?
Yeah, you have to be the buyer's agent. I mean, you could call the lender and ask them, but really, I mean, it would be the buyer's agent and the buyer and the lender to, go through their process and explain the information and how.
So the pre-approval letter just pretty much verifies that it's all.
Yeah. So you just the bank account, you just want to make sure they're using the correct one. Some people will try to, oh, I don't have the money in my account right now, can my mom just send it? Or, can my neighbor send it? And you can't do that. So they have to make sure that they're verifying the correct account. Okay, so the inspections, also a very important part of the escrow. This is going to be where the buyer is able to conduct any inspection they want on the property. Just to make sure that, they feel comfortable purchasing their house. It's going to be one of the biggest investments in their probably lifetime. So just make sure that when escrow opens, try to make this like on top of the, earnest money deposit. Make sure that this is the second most important thing. You have a contingency period to get your inspections done. So I always try to just get it done immediately, either like a day or 2 after escrow opens, because you want to make sure all your inspections are done within your contingency time frame. Make sure you're giving enough time also to be able to review the reports with your client. The most common inspections are a termite inspection and a home inspection. Any inspection that's done on the property, the buyer will pay for, unless something was agreed to on the contract or they have something in writing. But it does need to be in writing if the buyer is going to be asking for the seller to pay for it. There's also other inspections, like out in the Antelope Valley area, there's a septic system certification. Sometimes properties have propane tanks. There's water wells on the property. You want to try, if there is a septic or a well, you want to put that in your offer. You want to try to get the seller to pay for that. Those are 2 costly inspections, probably somewhere between $600 to $700 each. So if you're able to throw it in the contract and the seller agrees to pay for it, that's amazing. Also, if there's repairs that need to be done to either one of those can also be costly. So the more you could try to put on the seller side is better. You do, however, even if the seller isn't going to pay for these, you do want to get them inspected. So you would want to talk to your buyer about paying for these and making sure that these are, they're in good shape. Always make sure you're reviewing the MLS. There's been times where the septic's been missed, and it creates a big problem, because nobody knew it was there, and then the lender comes in and says, oh, well, I need the septic certification, and so it delays the process. If there's repairs, you always just want to check the MLS and make sure on there, they'll mark on there that there's a septic or there's a well. So you want to make sure that you're checking that when you're writing your offers. So if the buyer's financing is VA, the lender will require a clear termite report. They will also, if there's a water well or a septic system, they will also require a septic certification, and they will also require a bacteria test and a flow test.
I'm sorry, you said bacteria test and
A flow test.
flow test.
Yeah, so the bacteria test tests the water to make sure there's no bacteria in the water. And then the flow test is like a gallons per minute. They show how much water is pumping through the well. So all three of these, if VA, will be required to be given to the lender before closing. FHA is, if it's in the contract, it has to be there, but you can waive it on a VA. So it's not mandatory, but if it's written in the contract, it can't be taken out of the contract. It would have to be completed. So in order to add the well or the septic to the contract, I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the form or where to mark it on the contract, but the form is called, we call it a SWPI. It's a SWPI. So on the contract, page 4, number 4B, that's highlighted, this is what box you're gonna check. It's the septic, well, property monument, and propane addendum. Once you mark this box on your contract, this form will automatically generate in zip forms. So just make sure that you're going back into your file for that transaction and filling out the form. But this is where you're gonna mark the box if you want to add in the septic and well. And then this is what the form looks like. So number 1 is regarding the septic inspection. You're going to mark who you want to pay for this. There's an inspection and report. There's locating and accessing where the septic tank is. There's pumping and certification. All of these you're gonna mark the seller. You want the seller to pay unless obviously something was agreed to differently. But you're gonna mark all of these. These are all gonna be required to be done in order to get a septic certification. So you have to have the inspection, you have to have the report, they have to locate it, and then the pumping is absolutely necessary to get the certification. The excavation, I don't see this marked too many times, but you can. This basically means that they have to locate the tank. Sometimes they have to dig. They have to dig the tank out and find out where it's at and dig to be able to pump. And that costs, I think it's a couple $100 an hour. So it just depends on if you guys want to mark that. It's usually included within like the fees of if the seller pays for
I
it.
think it's more like $100 every 3 square feet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 'cause we just went through this.
Yeah, I think every septic company is a little bit different on how they charge. But septic companies are so busy right now and so behind that they're just charging astronomical amounts of money to get these done. So if you can, get the seller to pay for it, absolutely. Well inspection, number 2. Government report, they're not going to provide you a government report, so there's no need to check that box. Water productivity, this is gonna be your gallons per minute test. So you wanna make sure you check this box. And then the bacteria testing, they test for E. coli, they wanna make sure there's no chlorine, fecal matter in the water. So they'll take a sample test of the water, they take it to the lab, and it takes about 24 hours to get the results back. The chemical test, this isn't necessary, it's costly. No lender out here requires it that I'm aware of, so there's no need to mark this. It also takes, I think 7 to 10 business days to get the results back on this one. And then the other one is the propane. Sometimes properties have propane tanks on them. They could be owned, they could be leased. If there is, you want to mark it on here. There's also an option to have the seller fill up the tank before escrow closes. So you can mark that on here. And then obviously if the seller doesn't agree, they'll counter it out of the offer or whatever the case may be. But I would always try to include this document if there is septic well or propane on the property.
A few years back, we were able to go and pick up the water test kit from like Court Sales where we got it then, and then go test the water ourselves and turn it back into them. Are we still allowed to do that?
Good question. I don't know.
Because it was only a couple $100 as opposed to however much when you have a company do it.
I'm not sure. I can find out about that. I've never heard of that. But I can ask. Was it a while ago?
Yeah, it was when I was a TC, so that was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I could definitely find out. I know there's a separate cost. So if they go out there and do the gallons per minute and then they do the testing, it's 2 different costs. So that's a good question, honestly, because I never knew anything about that. So I'll definitely look into it. Yes.
Hey, it's Audrey. How are you?
Good. How are you, Audrey?
I'm good. Hey, Antelope Valley Eastern Water Agency has a laboratory in their offices, and I believe it costs $25 or $30.
There you go.
You have to go pick up a vial or a container, and then return it. Takes 24 hours or so, like you
She's
say.
so smart.
And then they'll give you the report.
And that's acceptable for like a lender?
Lenders accepted.
Well, because they give you the test then, right? They give you the water.
Agency doing the lab, so.
Right.
You would have to check with another a lender to make sure, but
Right.
I think we're the only lab in the area that does that.
Good to know. Thank you.
Saves a lot.
Yeah. I'll have to look into
For
that.
those sellers that don't want to pay that huge,
Yeah.
it's $600 to test it.
Okay, thank you, Audrey. Did you guys have any other questions on this? Okay. So request for repairs, it's a big one in a buyer's transaction. After you've done all your inspections and you have all your reports, you've spoken with your client, the first thing you want to do is determine if the buyer wants to request any repairs from the seller, either to replace something, repair something. It's important to express to your client that they're not buying a brand new house and not to send a huge laundry list of items that they want fixed. We want to make sure that the house is safe and sound. It's safety issues, hazard issues. Obviously, those are things that you want to talk to the seller about fixing. Cosmetic, new carpet, paint, things like that. Those are things that your client can put their own touches on when they purchase the house, as kind of like a do-it-yourself type thing. Again, they're not buying a brand new house, so you want to try to stick more to the major concerns. When you're sending the request for repair, try to talk to your client and get them to just ask for maybe 2 or 3 major things. Even if there are other safety concerns, like maybe a GFCI, When you start putting those littler things on the request for repair, say the air conditioner doesn't work, and then you're gonna put on there, replace GFCIs. The seller's gonna always tend to look at the cheaper things. So I recommend just taking the 3 major things that your buyer's concerned about, and put those on a request for repair. Because again, the sellers don't wanna spend money. If you're gonna put on there 2 minor things and 1 major thing, they'll be like, okay, I'll take care of these 2 things, but I'm not gonna fix the air conditioner. So, you just kind of want to talk to your clients about it, explain to them, how things work, and, they're not going to do cosmetic things, those are things you can take care of later, but also that you want to stick to the more important things. Also, your buyer can ask for a credit. Sometimes, instead of doing repairs, the buyer and seller will agree to some type of credit for repairs. Let them know that that credit, if agreed to, will go towards their closing costs. They're not going to actually physically get a check or cash or anything in their pocket. It's going to be taken off of their closing costs. So it'll be just that amount less that they have to bring in at the end of the transaction for their final money. Just a tip, make sure you're sending your request for repairs in prior to your inspection contingency due date. A lot of listing agents, they won't accept a request for repair if it's after the contingency period. If you feel like you're gonna go past that date, make sure you're sending in an extension for your inspection contingencies. Also, keep in mind, the seller doesn't have to respond to a request for repair. It's in bold letters at the top of the request for repair that the seller does not have to respond. If they choose not to respond, then at that point, the buyer has the option. They need to make up their minds on what they want to do. If they want to move forward with the transaction, they want to cancel it, whatever the case may be. But in most cases, the buyer and seller will tend to work things out and negotiate, unless it's a really big deal like replacing a septic tank or something like that. But yeah, just remember that the seller does not have to respond to a request for repair. Did you guys have any questions on that? So there's 3 standard contingencies on your transaction. There's an inspection contingency, the appraisal contingency, and the loan contingency. These are automatic when you have a fully executed contract. These are automatically in place. Per the contract, all contingencies need to be removed on the 17th day of the fully executed purchase contract, unless for some reason those dates were changed and agreed to in the contract. Sometimes as a buyer's agent, you would like to lower your contingency period to make your offer look better, and that's totally fine, but just make sure that you're staying within that time frame and you're able to meet that date if you're going to lower the time frame. Also, when you're getting that date to base your 17 days, that date is based off of the last signature on your contract. So if you have a purchase contract and then you went to a seller counter and then you went to a buyer counter and then you went to a seller counter 2, it's going to be that last signature on that seller counter 2. That date is going to be the date that you base your contingency periods off of. If it's just a purchase agreement, then it's going to be the date that the seller signed on the purchase agreement. So it's not when escrow opens, because escrow could open the next day. If it's a weekend, it's going to go till Monday. So it's going to start the date the last signature is on the document. Does that make sense?
physically sign to remove the contingency, don't they?
Yes, yep, yeah, they have to physically sign the contingency removal form to remove the contingency. Yes.
Only physically, or can you also e-sign it?
Oh yeah, you can e-sign, yeah, but they have to actually sign the form in order for the contingency to actually be removed. But yeah, it could be e-signed or hand-signed, that's totally fine. So obviously the appraisal is a very crucial part of the entire escrow. It's gonna determine the value of the seller's home. The buyer and the buyer's agents do not usually go to the appraisal. The listing agent will go there to represent the sale. We don't want too many people at the appraisal. The appraisers get very frustrated. They just want to come and go. They want to do their job and get out of there. They don't want, buyers there trying to get them to lower the price or, things bugging them. So it's just better that the listing agent goes and takes care of that. So it's not that they can't go. It's just better if they don't go. So once the appraisal report comes back, the inspection's been completed, there's a possibility that there might be some required repairs that have to be completed in order to continue with the loan. Some of the standard things are smoke detectors, carbon monoxide, double strapped water heater. The lender is going to require the repairs to be corrected in order to fund and close. So the repairs have to be done before we can close. If they're required to be completed, you want to make sure that they're getting done in a timely manner as soon as possible, because the appraiser does have to go back out there and re-inspect the repairs that they were completed. Sometimes they'll allow you to take pictures, which is great, but there is going to be a re-inspection, and the lender can't move forward with the loan until that re-inspection is completed. So if they're not taken care of right away, it could hold up the loan process, and we don't want to do that. So you want to make sure that you're staying on top of the listing agent to make sure that those repairs are getting completed. In most cases, the seller does pay for those repairs, unless there's other agreement or other terms that you guys have decided with each other. But in about 99% of the time, the seller will pay for those repairs. So if the value is higher than the purchase price, you don't want to tell anybody. You don't want to tell the listing agent. You don't want to tell the seller. Keep it to yourself. Just move forward. All they need to know, the listing agent, all they need to know is that the appraisal is good. You're good to go. We can move forward. If the seller finds out the appraisal came in higher, it could just cause complications. Doesn't mean that they could cancel on you, but it just puts things in their mind that they don't really need to know about that. So just keep it to yourself. The lender won't ever tell the listing agent that the appraisal came in higher. And if they do, you need to find a new lender.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you come across anything with the new way that they're doing appraisal, like desktop appraisals?
Yeah, so I've seen a few. I've seen some waivers. The waivers usually happen if the buyer's putting down a good amount of money. So depending on what the purchase price is, if they're, maybe say $100,000 down, then there's a possibility that the appraisal could be waived. And then the buyer can take that option or not. They could still proceed with the appraisal if they want, but if they have that option that's good for the buyer, it's good for the seller, usually they just go ahead and move forward with it. They've done drive-bys too, where they just, the lender or the appraiser feels the house, is justified with the purchase price. They'll do a quick drive-by and then they'll send in their report.
Thank you.
Also, if the house was refied or there was an appraisal done on it, in the recent past, they're
Right.
more likely to do something like that.
Yes. So if the value comes in lower than the purchase price, then this is when the buyer and seller are gonna have to renegotiate the price. As a buyer's agent, if the purchase price comes in lower, or the appraisal comes in lower, I always automatically send an addendum to the listing agent to ask them to reduce the price, just right off the bat. Doesn't mean they have to, doesn't mean they're going to, but I start the initiation to where, hey, this came in, let's lower the price. And then at that point, you're gonna have to renegotiate with the seller. Also, if the appraisal does come in lower, at that point, the seller may require and ask you for a copy of the appraisal, just to verify that the price actually did come in lower. Because, you know, we don't know these agents around here. They might say it came in lower and it didn't. If that's the case, I usually just give them the page that shows the value. I still don't send them the whole entire report, just the page that shows that it came in lower. So once the buyer and seller have negotiated a new price, you're gonna get an addendum to escrow stating the new price, make sure it's fully executed. If worst case scenario, buyer and seller can't agree, then worst case is that they're gonna have to cancel escrow. So we don't ever want that to happen. Also, just a quick note with FHA appraisals. If the buyer's financing is FHA, that appraisal will stay with the property for 120 days. If escrow cancels and the new offer, well, I guess that wouldn't pertain to you guys, but if escrow, which it could, because if you guys write an offer. So if you guys are putting in an offer on a property and the previous financing was FHA and they had an appraisal done, then your buyer is gonna go with that appraisal amount. The buyer can request a second appraisal at their cost, but whatever appraisal comes in lower is gonna be the value that is determined for the property. And thank you for that lesson. So just keep that in mind. If you're writing an offer canceled on that listing, it was FHA, an appraisal was done, that appraisal is gonna stay with that property. Did you guys have any questions?
I do. So if that appraisal stays with that property, and then by bringing a buyer, do they still have to pay for another appraisal?
They don't have to.
They can just use that appraisal?
Yes, they can, but if they feel, you know, the market's changed a little bit in a couple weeks and the value may be higher, then the buyer can request a second appraisal.
So whichever one is lower is the one that sticks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi. My question for you is that, is it okay to ask the listing agent, hi, by any chance, did you guys get any appraisal done and was it FHA and how much was it? Is it possible to do that or it's not right to ask that question?
To ask them if they got any FHA offers?
Yes.
I mean, you can. It's up to the listing agent on whether or not they want to disclose that information. They don't have to, but you could definitely ask.
Yeah, so if you see the property was in the market for like, let's say, 20 days, that's what I have in mind. Is it okay if I ask the listing agent, hi, you've been in the market for 20 days, have you been in escrow, and if yes, was it FHA?
Yeah, so, and you can also tell on the MLS whether if it's just been stayed active on the market or if it went pending and fell out. Usually the agents do disclose in the agent remarks that it was previously in escrow. So you can look at that information as well to determine on whether you want to ask that question. But yeah, you can definitely ask. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask. I mean, they're either going to tell you yes or no. But if they did have a previous escrow that canceled that was FHA, they should be telling you that. They should be informing you of that information.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so the next part is the best part, the fun part. Buyer gets to sign loan docs. Then we get to fund and record, and you guys get to give keys to your buyer. So after the lender's gone through his whole process, did all his paperwork, everything's good. The buyers have given all of their conditions to the lender. The lender's gonna give clear to close on the loan. They're also gonna have the buyer sign a closing disclosure. The closing disclosure is basically a document that's gonna go over all of the fees that the buyer is required to pay for the transaction. So you wanna make sure that your client is really looking at that document and making sure they're being charged for the correct things and the correct amount. Once the closing disclosure is signed by the buyer, we have to wait 3 business days for the buyer to be able to sign loan documents. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You have to wait 3 days after the closing disclosure is signed for the buyer to sign loan documents. So once that takes place, the lender will then email the escrow company the loan documents for the buyer to sign. They will sign with the notary, and that will all be set up through the escrow company. To get those signed, sometimes it could be a mobile notary. They can come into the office and sign with the escrow company directly. Once those are signed, then escrow will go ahead and get those to back to the lender, so they can go ahead and process the rest of the paperwork and get the loan funded. Once they receive the loan documents, they'll typically fund within 24 to 48 hours. And then once you get your confirmation of funding, the escrow company will record with the county recorder's office the next day. Los Angeles County used to do special recordings, but we don't do that. A special recording means you fund and record in the same day. Kern County actually does record special. So if it funds early enough in the daytime, you will record the same day in Kern County. If for some reason the loan funds on a Friday, then your loan won't record until Monday. So unless Monday's a holiday, it's going to be the next business day. Also, as a buyer's agent, make sure that you're setting up a final walkthrough with your clients 3 to 5 days prior to closing. You want to make sure that they have a chance to go in, do a final walkthrough, make sure everything's in the same condition as it was when they first saw the house. Also, if there was any repairs that were requested or agreed to, this is going to be your time to make sure that all of that was completed. It's best to... Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Sorry, for the interruption. So with the final walkthrough, you still need to add it, still need to add it to the final walkthrough?
Yeah, so those are 2 separate things. The AVID is an agent visual inspection disclosure. Every agent is supposed to fill one of those out. They're required to do their own visual inspection of the property. The final walkthrough is for the buyer to go in and do a final walkthrough, quick walkthrough, 5-10 minutes, just make sure everything's good. There's no holes in the walls, broken windows, things like that. But the AVID is completely different than the final walkthrough.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Yes?
Just a comment. She's the best TC ever in life. Use her, but my stuff still comes first. Use her. She's amazing. When I was at my other brokerage, it rhymes with GMAX. I hated having her as the opposite side as the TC because I was like, oh no, she's gonna ask for everything and this and that and this. And I came here, I'm like, I need her. So she's the best. Use her.
She is the best. Working with escrow with her was amazing.
Thank you, Jimmy. So you want to make sure you're doing your final walkthrough 3 to 5 days. Please don't wait till the day we fund or the day it records, because if there's an issue or there's a problem and we've recorded, it's now your client's fault or your client's problem. So you could try to go after the seller, it's just gonna be a big mess. So make sure that you're doing your final walkthrough at least 3 days before you're gonna close. Super important.
So for those people that get SIPs, should they do the VP before the SIP?
They need to do it before we close. A lot of agents they'll say, well, the seller's not out yet. In the SIP, there's verbiage in there that the seller must upkeep the house. So that's kind of what the agents get worried about, that once we close, they're just gonna destroy the house. But there's that document that protects them, protects the buyer. But yes, absolutely, the final walkthrough, it's required. They have to do a final walkthrough before we close. And if they don't, then they have to waive it. There's a little checkbox on the form that you would waive it. But yes, absolutely, it needs to be done before we close. Just a tip, remind your clients to make sure that they are transferring all utilities into their name before we close. Important thing to do, they can call and they can schedule a specific date to have them transferred. I haven't done it in a while, but I know Edison was really behind for a while, and if it actually gets shut off, it takes like a week or so to get it turned back on. So you want to just make sure that they're getting those transferred over. Even like a day before closing, it's not going to cost them much if the seller's still living there for a day and they have it transferred over into their name. The other thing is, so the water company will not allow your client to turn the water into their name until the escrow is completely closed. So it has to close and record with the county. What they're gonna need is either a final closing statement or a water letter from the escrow company. And either one of these can be given to your client as soon as confirmation is given. The final closing statement usually takes a little bit longer for escrow to get, so they would want to call escrow and just ask them for, it's called a water letter. And then they would take that letter to the water company and show them that this property is now in their name, and then they can turn on the water for them. Did you guys have any questions on that? So Command, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Command, I hope so. Command's the system that Keller Williams uses to keep record of all the transactions that go through the office, whether it be a listing, an escrow, cancellation, new build, whatever the case may be, everything needs to go into Command. This is where you're going to upload all of your documents. There's a process that you have to go through to do so. I believe there's some videos on how to use Command for the transaction.
They're so outdated.
Are they?
They're outdated.
I think it was Garrett did the training.
It's a great training video. If you find the ones with Garrett, watch
Oh, I
them.
have them.
But they're outdated.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, there's no more first or second.
Well, that's true.
There's the YouTube, the 66 Day with Marty Miller. If you just do that, I think it's only like a year old.
Okay.
It's good.
Or if you guys don't want to do it, you guys can just call
7-8
me.
minutes.
And I'll do it for you, right?
That 66 day, that one's the best one.
Yeah.
So this is where you're gonna upload all your documents. You submit reviews to Angie. She reviews your documents. If an I's not dotted, she's gonna send it back to you, and you're gonna have to fix it. So just make sure that when you're uploading your documents, everything's completed, fully executed, you got to make sure that you're in compliance, and that's where Angie comes in.
And please make sure those TDSs and SPQs, make sure the date is on page 1, and make sure all yeses are explained, because you guys don't like me taking that stuff back, and I can't get back for that little stuff.
The last compliance wasn't doing any of that, so everybody got so used to not having to do that. So that's why I think some people are getting frustrated. So yeah, make sure you're in compliance with your broker. This is the system where you're gonna wanna go. Time frames, ensure all your documents are filled out properly. This is also to make sure that you're gonna get paid on time. So if you guys wanna get paid on time, get your check, you gotta make sure that your command transaction is approved by compliance. Well, once you have the fully executed purchase contract, you'll need to go into command, upload it. I believe it's within 3 days of acceptance. It needs to be into command. And then you're also going to be in command several times throughout the escrow period. If you fail to upload and import your documents in command, you're not going to get paid on time and not going to receive your commission check. Even if your check's in the office, it's not going to be released to you until that command file is approved. You must have a fully completed file in command, and then the okay to release from compliance for them to give you your check. It's important to make sure that when you're receiving documents pertaining to your file that you're uploading them right away. You also need to make sure that you're requesting your CDA, which is your Commission Disbursement Authorization. This is going to be your breakdown for your check that goes to escrow, and that's how they're going to determine how to cut your check. If you don't get them one, they're going to send a bulk check, and then that's going to also cause a delay in you guys getting your checks. Any questions on that? So this is my information. If you guys want to write it down, I'm happy to help answer questions, whatever you guys may need. Again, if you guys just don't want to deal with any of this at all, give me a call and we can definitely work something out with you guys, for sure.
Where do you work at?
My house, my kitchen. Also, could everybody sign in for me too, please? Sure. Did you sign in? Yes, my kitchen.
Nice.
Yes.
Thank you so much, this was really helpful.
Thank you, you're welcome. Thank you for joining.
Sure.
Did you guys have any other questions? No? Well, I appreciate you guys coming in and joining me today on this
Thank you.
wonderful Monday. Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So you're gonna stop TCing when you start selling?
No.
No? Wow.
Well, my goal is to get my husband to sell, and I'll be his TC.
Hey,
So, yeah.
What do you do now?
He works at a title loan company.
Oh, so he's already in the paperwork business.
Yeah. So, yeah, he's just set for his test date, so he should be.
Nice.
Yeah. So, create a
That's what I'm
team.
talking about.
He's the people person. He can go and talk to anybody, and so he can do that side of it.
That's awesome. All right.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much. You guys would mind signing in, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Next week. Thank you.
Then I have a night.
So anyway, when I was, I mean, putting my information in and stuff, but I was concerned to know, even though we're not marketing yet, do I still have to put it in my way?
Yeah, you're gonna put the song in a little bit. Yeah.
Do you want me to put it in?
Do you want me to help you with it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, for the,
Oh, yeah. You should be sending it to me. Yeah.
but I, if things I you want me to just email you?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can you do that?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you. You're so cool. You're funny. Thank you.
I was lying, guys.
I
So I told her to write that?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
You think that's right?
Who's the lender?
Justin, Sourcewell.
Yeah.
I was like, I go, do you have everything, eh? He said, I have everything. We're good. We're just doing fine.
Yeah, until the underwriter reviews it and he's like, where's the termite?
Okay.
Do you think there'll be repairs? What is this? What's his name?
Luke? You got something out of here?
I have like premium termite I use all the time. Like they even went like 3 hours away from me because I use them all the time.
How have they been lately?
They're cheaper than what's his name
I
too.
don't care about the paying for the thing. I care about the work. I don't want the work.
Do you think there's gonna be a lot of work?
Maybe a little bit, maybe some. It's just an old house. You think we'll have a better chance with your guy?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can call.
Everybody got their own piles,
Is
I
it
think.
vacant?
Yes.
It's vacant?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
This is it. That was the weekend.
Where is the stupid
I
mouse?
never used them, so maybe you could, you have another question?
No, but I can't find the mouse. On here, what is this?
Okay, thank you, let me know.
Yeah, would you just text me real fast so I don't forget? Just
Okay.
order for me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. There you are. Thank you.
It's nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Of course, Jessica, you have a good day.
You too.
You
thank
feel a little better now?
Yeah.
That's good. All right, take care.
Thank you.
All right, bro. Oh, I know what I wanted.
You're not trying to mess with me.
Okay, let's make sure this is